out of executive session, and we're doing our further discussion of our proposed FY23 budget. I'll hand it over to Dr. Stavum.
Yeah, so not too many changes from the first view of the budget, and we've, I think, addressed any minor questions that the board had. So Todd can give just a brief recap of a few of those slight adjustments, and then from there, if the board has any further questions we can answer, we're happy to do that. Otherwise, this will kind of take care of this part of the process for the preliminary look at the budget. So I'll turn it over to you, Todd.
Thanks. I think we mailed out those changes, so you've got them, and they're all reflected in this book. We were short. We had net revenue, not gross revenue, in the house construction fund. That was one small adjustment. I'm looking for this. I had the, still do. This is the old one. This is actually 2021 levies. I'm gonna have to get that corrected for online, but this is, we pull it from the Statistical Digest, and 22 wasn't over yet, so that's what they give us, 21. So this is actually 21. So these historical, we can go up farther on our own because we know what our own levies are and are going to be, but we don't have our neighbors. So there isn't a ton of difference between what that budget looked like before and after. I just want to quickly I know the 5-year plan thrills everybody in the audience, but it's kind of important, these key factors. So I just kind of want to run through those real quickly and then remind you of the federal budget. So just real quick, here's the keys in our projected fund balance, which we have right now at about 7.7 out in 2022. It's on page 5 in your book. So we have the COVID funding built into the budget. That's line 23 down here. I'm not going to go state apportionment. We took a little hit this year. We see it probably growing again in the future. So we had budgeted about 2.2 million this year. So we lowered that number and then inflated it out at 3%. The opt-out, as per the plan we presented last year, we have it going from 9.1 to 11 next year. They've been at 9.1 for about 4 years, I believe. And then 12.5, 13, 13.5, 14, growing kind of a inflation pace with the rest of the budget rather than just hovering at that 9.1. We have the transfer from capital outlay. We budgeted 5.1 this year. Next year, we're budgeting 4.25, and then that going forward. Maybe if the capital outlay budget gets better or worse, that has to be adjusted each year. But right now, we're just having a holding pattern. State aid went up 6% this year because of the inflation we had, the 7.7 odd percent inflation we had this year. Because it lags for 2 years, basically. The 21 number dictates the 23 inflation, and it would have been, according to the 3% inflation, whichever is less, it would have been 2.6. So next year, we know inflation will be at least 3, unless they change the law, because the law right now reads 3% inflation, whichever is less. It'll be in the 7s next year, maybe even 8. And so we've built 3 in going out. For that efficiency factor, that's significant. We project to save 0.75% each year. Doesn't sound like a big number, but on 200 million, plus it's $1.5 million a year in trying to find efficiencies. The teacher delta we have going forward at $1 million a year. That may go down a little bit even more. That we last year raised up our average teacher salary and hope to do so in the future. So if that, the closer that or the starting teacher salary. The closer the starting teacher salary gets to the top end, the less you save on turnover. And that delta is really reflected through not just the teachers, but that's by far where the most salaries are spent. And then we have our health insurance increase. That's locked in by contract at 5. It can go up more, but then the employee just makes up that difference. So we just play the safe number going out there. In 25, we have these COVID expenditures, which we'll look at just briefly again here in another second, coming on at $3.6 million. But between the efficiency factor and the teacher delta, and those are the keys, and keeping the salary tied to the state aid increase, you can see, you can kind of come out. So we're going to be at 7.7% fund balance. That's on line 21. In FY24 into 24. Then we'll drop down to 7 because we're taking on that 3.6 that's currently being funded by COVID. But the next year with the efficiencies and the delta, we climb back up to 7.3 and we'll be project to be at 7.7 out in 27. So I went through that fast, or not for those guys, but they couldn't go through it fast enough. But any questions on that? The big keys in the savings are, we get staff turnover, we save money there, and we expect our budgeters to go in and find savings. And you can, on the prior page, you want to look at that quick. If you don't have that delta, the fund balance in the very bottom, you can see without the delta, the fund balance wouldn't be 7.7, it'd be 2.2. So you got to get that delta, or else that adds up, that 0.75% adds up over 5 years. Questions on that? Hearing none. We talked about our levy. Our levy's slated to drop from $828 for a homeowner this year to $816 next year. Won't go that. Our total tax supported funds. That's our budget there. So our general fund is at $212 million in combined expenditures. If you pull out the federal money, it's $189 million. Our special ed budget's at $53.5 million. Our capital outlay budget expenditures are at $28.2, and then $4 million transfer to the general fund. And our bond redemption fund, paying off that bond that we passed in 1998, is now at $9.1 million in expenditures next year. And it's slated to go up eventually to 12. And all that cost, because it ties with the capital outlay fund that is built into the capital outlay plan. So it takes into account that. And self-supported funds, I won't dwell on those much. The biggest by far is the insurance trust fund at $46 million a year. And then the items on here, it's page 17, thank you. The items that are green, or a shade of green, not white, basically, are the items of the coronavirus dollars that are being currently expended, or were expended last year, this year, and a little bit of last year, quite a bit this year, and some are proposed for next year. And you can see that if you look at the columns up top there on that year implemented category. It said FY21, it was before we finished 21 is when some of those dollars were spent. And then 22 got put in this year. A lot of that is the middle school, high school counselors that were put into the new schools, and the nurse and things like that. And then there's some items projected for 23. A lot of that is about getting kids involved in activities in middle school. And we're purchasing a bus pass system so you can actually see if your bus is on time, with an app, but you can see if your bus is on time and whether your child got off the right stop and all that good stuff. So that's what the coronavirus budget looks like. We had several items on there totaling 4.2 million. We went, a group, members of the different budget committees went through and we drew a line at 3.6 million there, and that's what we presented to the district budget review committee. Other than that, I don't want to, I mean, everything I'm saying is basically a repeat of last time, so I don't want to take up a ton of time on that. Is there any questions? And if I can answer them, we got a whole host of people over there that can.
I think what's important for the public to know is that the district is really trying to increase direct supports to our students, and especially with what the effects of COVID and other, both mental health as well, through the counselors as well as the SIPS teachers. And, you know, we're going to have to continue to evaluate that going forward to see, you know, is this just an anomaly of COVID, or is this going to continue? So as a public, we're going to have to look at budgeting, since those funds aren't going to be there anymore. What will need to stay in place for our district as well? So it's good that we've separated this out for the public so they can kind of see what was added in and what we can do, use our data collected to see what is actually working and what is still needed after the budgeting process is over and ESSER funds have expired. Yeah, expired.
I think it's important that we bring that up, because expansion funds are interesting to deal with, and it's exciting, and there's new opportunities. But then the real work is growing a general fund revenues to be able to continue forward with the ongoing costs of these types of programs, so that we know we'll take a real look at what kind of outcomes they're having and what we can carry forward. It's an important part of continuing balanced budget. So.
Exactly. Any other questions for Todd or anyone else from the district?
I would just take a moment to thank all of our departments. As you know, this is a long process that begins much earlier than when it comes out in this form, and requires lots of discussion and debate and hard decisions. Even with the things that are added, there are that many more that never even made it into the white that feel like needs. I think COVID has presented such an interesting kind of a hash mark in our time and space, and some of the things that we looked at maybe 3 years ago, some of those things have continued and probably would have been on this budget no matter what. Some things have even more importance because of some of the effects of COVID. So when I look across this, I look and see, are we looking at kind of that whole range of things that we have to be aware of in a district, which first is students and engagement with schools and future program health and infrastructure. And COVID put some strains on some of those things, and it's true we got an infusion of federal dollars, but some of those strains will be long felt after those ESSER dollars go away. And so I think our team has also done a good job of trying to project forward what are some of the longer term things that we need to put in place just as how we do business, and what are some of those shorter term things where we're trying to get an infusion and a quantum leap like they were designed to do. So I think this is a good, healthy balance of that, but really hard work that goes into everybody looking at the needs of the whole while you're still advocating for a particular area. So I appreciate their work, and I appreciate the review of the board. You've asked great questions, and we appreciate your attention to what it is that we're collectively trying to do in our district. So thank you for your work.
I would just expand on that too, just thanking the community members that participate in the smaller groups, as well as the budget committee as a whole, taking time away to provide their input. It's greatly appreciated as well.
And no one signed up for public input, so on to that. So seeing nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.